together students and faculty with obviously all the experiences we have together in one virtual place, I think is really powerful. And I hope we can continue to facilitate that into the future. I was taking a ton of notes during these conversations because I think a lot of what was discussed today is going to be critical for our organization's advocacy and lobbying work, right? We meet with policymakers, they need to hear these stories to be able to make changes to try to impact things for the better. And specifically, I saw a lot of conversations about funding, and funding is key. And that's where our advocacy work can really make a difference, because in the state capitol, where FAC is located, we can lobby legislators to dedicate more funding to our systems. You know, I also mentioned, I saw some conversations about protections from faculty. I know, Truck, you mentioned that, right? That's something we can talk about within state policy too. So I make these sort of connections to show that our next session, which is about training to how to be an advocate, right? How to lobby, is really critical because it ties these two conversations together. And if we can all be effective advocates, we can make change through our political process. So with that, I'm going to pass the microphone, as it were, over to our next presenters, Wendy and Stephanie.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for being, I guess, almost afternoon now. 2 minutes away. So I have to say I'm a little emotional. This morning was a beautiful conversation, but it brought emotions to the surface for me. So I'm gonna, if I'm a little off my game, I'm sure everybody in this room understands. But normally we would be doing this in Sacramento in the Holiday Inn, and we would be giving you some nuts and bolts of advocacy and hopefully building your skills and confidence to go walk a few miles down the street and then knock on your legislators' doors. And we can't do that today, but we're hoping that we still inspire you to connect with your legislators. You can do it via Zoom, so maybe it's easier and removes barriers for some that didn't have the means to travel to their local legislative office or maybe even Sacramento. So hopefully you'll still do that. And next week we have the week of advocacy. We have town hall meetings with our legislators, which we'll have at the end a slide with that information, and we'll also be, I'm sure, sending it out. And then we also have regional meetings so that we can build advocacy among our regions, some organizing. So with that, I'm going to launch in. I should have said who I was. I'm Wendy Brill-Wynkoop. I think most of you have seen me earlier in the conference, but I'm president-elect for FAC, and I'm also current chair of the FAC Legislative Committee. And then my partner in crime today in this presentation, Stephanie, where are you? Oh, there you are.
Right here, Stephanie Goldman. I'm the associate director at FAC, and I'm also our lobbyist.
Thank you. So we're a little bit short of time and we'll go as quick as we can, but we didn't want to end the conversation early because we had such a powerful conversation before this presentation. So we're going to go over, the basic bill cycle quickly, the budget process quickly, and then we're really going to dive into how you can connect with your local legislators. And is the chat open for people or not? If it is open, I'd love if you know who your assembly person and senator are for California. If you can put that in the chat, state senator and assembly person. If you don't know, we're going to show you how to find out, but hopefully by the end of this presentation, you know who they are. So this is the life cycle of a bill in the state of California. We'll have a test on it at the end. No, I'm just kidding. We will not. It's complicated. Sometimes because things are complicated, it keeps us from participating in civics. And I don't think that that should be the reason that we don't. This is something that everybody can learn and participate in, and you should be knowing what bills particularly are going to affect you and communicating to your legislators, what you feel about those bills. I made a simpler drawing of how a bill became a law, hopefully with a little metaphor that's more helpful to remember it. But on the left-hand side, you have the Assembly Bill Highway or the Assembly Highway. And on the right, you have the Senate Highway. Every bill starts with an idea. Often those ideas come from the community. Is it not? Oh, it's not sharing. I had started sharing and I guess I didn't click yes. Thank you for that, Stephanie. Are you sharing it, Steph? Yes, okay.
Yes,
I had
I'm sharing
clicked share, but I guess when I clicked it, it didn't click. So I thought I was sharing. And I always ask, and that's the one time I didn't ask. Somebody needs to mute because I'm getting an echo. Thank you. So how a bill becomes a law in California. Can you back up one so they can see the mess really quick? The other way. The other way. Do you want me to share it? Okay, you got it now. Great. So this is the life cycle of a bill, which is the confusing one I thought you guys were looking at on my screen. Overwhelming amount of information if you want to try and figure out the bill cycle. So then moving forward, this is a drawing that I created a few years ago to simplify the process. And it starts with an idea. So the idea often will come from, it could come from an outside group that's putting pressure on the community college system to be more corporate, or it could come from faculty like FAC, or it could come from a union, or it can come from a group of powerful students who want to right a wrong. So you have an idea. The idea is going to be proposed to either an assembly member or a legislator who would become the author of the bill. Hopefully, a group that has sponsoring an idea can come up with other sponsors or co-sponsors that will help them get the bill through the system. And as the bill moves through the system, it goes to different policy committees. Often we'll get amendments made that are suggestions from different people, from different groups. If a bill often costs too much money, it'll end up in appropriations, which sometimes it doesn't get out of appropriations. That's the graveyard in the center. And then the assembly, which is a population of assembly town over there, 80 assembly members. If they have a bill and it makes it all the way through their process and doesn't get stuck in a committee, then it will go to the Senate side, the other house, the second house. And vice versa, if there's a bill from the Senate, which there's 40 senators in the state of California, if it makes it through their process of amendments and committees and doesn't get stuck in appropriations or another committee, then it will go to the assembly. The assembly and the Senate, if they both pass the other house's bills and there's some difference in the bills, they have to go to a concurrence committee to make sure that they reconcile any differences, and then eventually to the governor's office. At that point, it can be ignored by the governor, and if it gets to a certain date, it becomes law. It can be vetoed by the governor. And if it's vetoed by the governor can also, the legislature with a 2/3 vote can also override the veto. So that's very quick. I'm sorry, I want to make sure we get to the good stuff. This is the same thing, just in a list, so we can skip this. Okay, so Stephanie, you're on.
Great. So California, we've got two major parties, the occasional independents, but we've seen a huge amount of growth over the past 5+ years in the partisan legislature. So if you look at 2015, I mean, we've been Democrat dominated for years, but we did have a little bit of a better representation by Republicans. As time has gone on, notably through the Donald Trump years, we've elected less and less Republicans. Let's go to quick next one. So as you can see, for this year, we've got 31 Democrats in the Senate, 9 Republicans. We are way over a supermajority, which means basically any bill that's backed by the Democrats is going to get through. Any bill that the Dems don't give support to will die. In the Assembly, we have 59 Democrats, 19 Republicans, 1 independent, and 2 vacancies. So again, we are so far beyond a super majority. The other advantage to this is, of course, if the governor is to veto a bill, but the majority of Democrats in the legislature would like to see it become law, they've got enough power to override that. So very, very different landscape than what we see at the federal level.
So just for perspective, I wanted to give you an idea of how many bills. So the assembly members and the senators are limited in how many bills they can introduce. In 2 years, it's 50 bills each for the assembly members and 40 bills each for the senators. So if you do the math, that's 5,600 bills in a 2-year cycle. Now, not all of those are going to make it through the process, but still, that's a lot of bills. So in 2019, which is 2 years ago, there were 2,600 bills that were introduced in the state legislature, and 166 of those bills had something to do with the California community colleges. The chancellor's office has a matrix and they track bills. So I used that as just the measure. I just counted how many the chancellor's office was tracking because those would affect the community colleges in some way. Of the 2,600 bills, 1,000 made it to the governor's desk. 870 laws became law, 172 were vetoed, and 85 of those original 166 bills, so roughly half, became new laws that affected the California community colleges. That's 1 year, 85 new laws that affect the California community colleges. I want you to remember that and note it, because those are 85 tweaks, changes, some good, some bad, some sort of indifferent. But it's important to know that the community colleges are a big part of the California budget, and legislators want to have bills that are successful, and they're listening to a lot of people that are coming with a lot of different ideas to their desks, and they're creating these bills and moving them through the system. And without students and faculty advocating for what we actually need at the California community colleges, what makes sense at the California community colleges, bills will move forward without our input. In 2020, which is last year with COVID, even with COVID, which killed a ton of bills, 37 bills made it through that changed the community colleges. So that's still a lot, even in a year where it was radically up, the process was radically changed. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to mention that one of the bills passed was a FACT-sponsored bill. So, all of you who are members of FACT, just know that you do make a difference, and our bills, are having a major impact on our system.
Yes, our lottery bill made it through. Woohoo! We're very proud of that. So this is the legislative site for California. You can just type in California legislation and boom, you'll hit it. This PowerPoint, I believe, is linked off a FACT site, the event site, so that you guys can just click on the link if you want. But you can look up any bills, past or present, and follow them. You can create a free account, and I believe you can follow up to about 50 bills on your own. So when bills either move through the system or amended, it'll actually send you an email and let you know, so you don't have to go back to the site every time. Go ahead and go forward. These are some of our system partners, and you might want to check their positions on bills to get an idea of perspective. If you see a bill and it affects the community colleges and you're like, well, I don't know, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Sometimes they're written in a way that I just don't even understand what they're trying to change, right? I always tease Stephanie about that because she has a legal background, and I'm like, do you guys write this stuff on purpose so we don't understand it? So ASCCC has bill positions. Of course, FACT does. The Chancellor's Office has their matrix, and they also have some system webinars that you can watch. The CFT and CCA, the unions, and I don't know if CCCI has a page for positions, but if they do, please somebody let me know, and we'll add it to our PowerPoint. And then also the league. So these are places that you can check to get a perspective on a bill, and the league is going to be the presidents of colleges and the trustees. So note, in the Chancellor's Office, we know. So note who's saying what about a bill. And we should add our students on here too. SSCCC. That's another place you can check. Go ahead, Stephanie, this one's yours.
So when a bill is going through the legislative process, Typically, when we're talking about community college bills, there are a couple of different places they'll end up in policy committee. Assembly higher education on the assembly side, and Senate education on the Senate side. When we're talking budget, we want to look at the Assembly Budget Committee and the Senate Budget and Fiscal Review. We have here a couple of the chief consultants who we work with regularly. For sub 2 education finance, Mark Martin is the principal consultant, McCarty's the chair, Senate education, Senator Lave is the chair. And I'd like to point out that in Senate Budget and Fiscal Review, the chair of that committee is Senator Skinner, and she actually will be involved in our week of action. So if you're interested in the budget side of things, please attend that next week. And for time, we'll move on.
Thank you. So these are some links, not going to spend a lot of time on them, but you can see who the members of the Senate and the Assembly are. You can also watch the hearings. There are different hearings on different policy areas, the budget, education. And so that if you wanted to participate and see what conversations were happening, you can also watch those. You can also now testify remote, which is pretty cool. You can call in and wait in line. And at the end, when they ask for public comment, you can make public comment, which some of our students do an amazing job. I love hearing the students at the end. Go ahead and go forward. The budget process is a little different than our legislative process for bills. This is something I stole from the Chancellor's office, and then I dropped in some dates. So it actually starts in September with the Chancellor's office soliciting priorities from stakeholders in the Chancellor's office. So FAC would be one of those. And then they draft their budget request, the Chancellor's office, the system request. That's always available online. That is submitted to the Department of Finance. And then in January, the Department of Finance releases the governor's budget, right? So that's the beginning of what most people know. Oh, it's the January release of the governor's budget. That starts the conversation. Then the Legislative Analyst Office for the legislature sort of responds in their report. And then there's a whole bunch of budget subcommittee hearings where there's conversations about the January budget and plan and what might be a better way to do it. Eventually in May, we have the governor's revision, and then that will go through some more subcommittees for final action. And then eventually in June, we end up with a budget. We have really 3 people in California that decide the budget. We have the governor, we have the speaker, and we have the pro tem. It's really come down to those 3 because of the supermajority in both houses of the Democrats. So sometimes we end up with things that nobody liked in those hearings. You heard Calbright's not a good idea and we hate this SCIF, and we end up with it anyway. And a lot of that has to do with that very small 3 people that really end up deciding the last areas of the budget. Stephanie, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, so this year it's been a little bit of a different budget process because of COVID, because there were some early action items in the governor's proposed budget. So you've probably seen in the news certain huge budget bills have passed already. It's a really interesting time to watch the process happen because COVID's made it pretty fascinating. Additionally, we normally would have budget subcommittee hearings coming up. We've actually already had most of those, so we don't foresee having too many more until after the May revision.
Often we'll get something through the budget bills as opposed to the legislative process. Sometimes you'll see something that's a really great idea in the legislative process the year before or 2 years before, and it doesn't have any money or funding, so it just dies in appropriations. And then sometimes you'll see that stuff dusted off and brought through the budget process, which is a little different because it doesn't have as much, I'm trying to think of the word, I'm tired today, sorry. As much conversation, and nobody's looking at it as carefully. So often we'll end up with something through that budget process, which we were surprised that we get. Go ahead and go for it, I think. So moving forward to next week, we wish we were sending you all over to the Capitol on Monday to go meet with legislators, but we can't, right? We're most of us are at home. So what we're recommending is that you still reach out to your legislators. I hope that you guys, I can see in the chat that some of you figured out who your representatives are in the state government, and I appreciate that. If you still haven't figured it out, you can go to the legislative site that we mentioned and look it up. So we ask you that you make an appointment with them. So you can call, and we have a document with scheduler information, right, Stephanie, that we're going to release. So you can email the scheduler and you can ask for an appointment and you can let them know kind of what time you're available. And we have some talking points and some instruction here we're going to give you for scheduling that meeting. But it's important that students and faculty both are connecting with their legislators so that legislators, before they're making these decisions about the community colleges, have our stories and have what's important and what we need. Go ahead. And we hope that you can move forward. And then we hope that additionally that you keep up the relationship with your legislature. So don't just meet once, put it in a reminder that you meet with them, you know, every month or once every couple of months. That would be helpful because the more you're a good resource for that legislature, the more they will start reaching out back to you. This is our FAC Advocacy Toolkit for the week of action next week. Again, this should be hopefully dropped in, yes, it's dropped in the chat, and it's a PDF and you'll have it available to you. And then the light blue writing that you see on there is our links so that you can click on them. So this toolkit will help you with finding your representative, setting up a meeting, reviewing our talking points will be available. We have a fact sheet available for you. It has some do's and don'ts if you didn't get them from this presentation and you need a reminder of them. It has the Council of Faculty Organizations budget letter, which is all the faculty unions and the ASCCC and FACS budget letter where what we ask for collectively. And then also our legislation, sponsored legislation, AB 1326, which is the county liaison. Do you want to add anything to that, Stephanie?
Yeah, quick note. Please don't be intimidated about contacting your elected official. They work for you. You're the constituents. I know it can be kind of intimidating, particularly possibly for students, but make these steps to really meet up with them, talk about these priority issues, and make sure that they understand why the community colleges need to be a priority in our budget and also on the legislative side.
The second page of the toolkit has a little flow chart that sort of helps you walk you through the process again to remember the advocacy steps. Okay, let's go forward. Trying to be mindful of the time. So this is a sample of the email request, and you can, you know, copy and paste this from the PowerPoint if you want, but it's just an example of how to introduce yourself and how to ask for a meeting. You can change it however you like, but this is just an example. Let them know you're a faculty member, let them know which college you're at, let them know if you're a constituent of theirs, or if you are contacting them because your college is in their area. You might want to delineate one or the other. It might be the same. You might work where you also have your college. And then let them know a little bit about what you want to meet about. In this example, I talked about the state budget and the priorities for the community colleges. Let them know when you're free or when you expect to have the meeting. That helps them sort of know how urgent it is. And then if you can provide sort of some time blocks that you're available, that will help them be able to schedule a meeting quicker.
When you do schedule an appointment, you'll likely schedule it with a staff member. That's fantastic. Capitol staff and district staff are usually experts in the area that you're talking about, and they're the ones who will then go back to the member and really talk about those issues.
Okay. So meeting with the legislator via Zoom, you want to email and set up the appointment. You want to send a Zoom link or have them send a Zoom link. I usually send them one just because it's easier. They don't have to do it. Get there a little early. Sometimes you have to wait for them. Sometimes their meetings run long. It's best if you can advocate in groups with students and faculty. It is very, very helpful to have student stories when you're advocating, because that's who we're inevitably advocating for, right, is our students, to improve the system for our students. So if you can have student stories, that's amazing, incredibly powerful. But I would keep it to about 4 people maximum, particularly during Zoom. I know in past years at the A&P, we would have quite a large group. I remember being in with Valley College in Nazarian's office. I don't know if it was last year or the year before, and I think there were 15 of us in there, and he was so wonderful to have us all squished into his office, and he refused to sit down because, you know, he wanted the students to sit down. But that's probably unrealistic in a Zoom room, so I would have it a little more concise group of people, maybe 4 maximum, so that you can make sure that you can focus on the conversation. And then it's a fast meeting, 20 to 30 minutes max. Usually they have to go on to the next meeting. So make sure that you're succinct and you focus on what you're really asking for. Some basic Zoom etiquette. I know it seems like we should all know this by now, but you might want to print out the list and remember, you know, keep personal distractions and background noise to a minimum, turn off your phone and notifications, mute when you're not talking, use a Zoom background that's sort of plain or non-distracting, add your name and your college name to your Zoom name so that the legislator or staffer will know where you're from. Don't use any silly filters like the cat filter, although that's been my favorite video for the last year. Use a natural camera angle. This is one that I don't think a lot of people think about, but when you're, you know, you have the camera either going up your nose or really high, it's very distracting to try and have a conversation. So try and have what would seem like a conversational or a normal camera angle. And then of course, try and dress professionally, or at least dress in a non-distracting way so that we maintain this as a business relationship. The sort of structure of the meeting, you need to have especially if more than one person, you need to have somebody who's the facilitator or leader of the group. This person's job is to sort of keep things going. So you want to make sure that you have appointed that leader. Make sure that you let them know if you're a constituent or your college is in the legislator's district. That's going to make a big difference to them and what you're saying, as opposed to you being somebody who's outside of their district. Keep your stories and experiences that you're sharing very short and on message. If you start to ramble, make sure that leader comes in and sort of brings the conversation back around. It happens. We all get nervous. And when you start to ramble off message, then you're losing time and focus. Then it's great to have somebody in the meeting who could say, hey, you know, we're focusing on the budget right now, and pull it back together. And it's okay if you don't have all the answers. If a legislator asks the question, you don't know it, don't come up with an answer you don't know the answer to. Just say, I don't know, but I'd love to follow up. Can I have your email address? And then that is a great opportunity to email them and start to form a relationship with that staffer or legislator that you can continue on. So this happened to me just last week with Assembly Member Valladares's office. First time I ever met with them. She's a new assembly person. She asked me for something. I didn't have it on hand. I didn't have the answer. I went and found it for her. I sent it to her. And now she's asked me for something else, which means that she knows that she can rely on me to find her some answers. And of course, the information that I'm going to give her is the information that's important to the students and faculty, right? Not my administration. Go ahead and go forward. Do you want to take over, Stephanie?
Absolutely. So when I wanted to say walk into the office, but of course it's going to be through Zoom. When you meet them on Zoom, make sure you introduce each person. It would be great if you have a leader to, sort of introduce themselves and then call out people to introduce, because I'm sure you've all found that in meetings, people sort of sit silently. They don't want to be rude. It's great to have somebody who can really keep the meeting going. So after introductions, you know, we also, these are real people you're talking to. So if they have an interesting background or something, you know, mention it, sort of get them comfortable as well. Sort of get the conversation going. Start with the leader. The leader of the advocacy team will summarize the asks. So if you're talking about the budget, you touch on the COLA issue. Then rotate through each member. Again, having that leader sort of call people out, dive deeper into a single ask, and provide a concise example that illustrates the benefits of what you're asking for the students. Whoever the leader is, it's incredibly important that you remind the legislator or staffer of the advocacy materials. You send them over. I want to say leave them behind. And then ask if there are any other materials or resources that you can provide. Have a brief conclusion, and of course, thank the person for taking the time. In this Zoom world, each legislator and staffer is having meeting after meeting after meeting with almost no breaks in between. So it's wonderful that they're taking the time with you. And so thank them for that. So we have some.
I was going to say, make sure you send them a thank you via email, but I think we have that later. So go ahead. Sorry, go.
So for this year, we've got several asks. FAC is actually sponsoring a bill, AB 1326. It's a Assemblymember Jose Medina. No, it's Assemblymember Dr. Joaquin Arambula bill. And what that bill would do is designate a county point person that our counselors can contact when they have a student who comes to them with some kind of an issue that may be helped by some kind of a county program. So, you know, an issue regarding hunger, food, even legal issues, something that maybe the college can't help with, but there are existing county programs. FAC is also co-sponsoring AB 375, which is an Assemblymember Jose Medina bill, and that is a bill to increase the current part-time faculty load from 60% of a full-time load up to 80 to 85%. This is all happening in live time, so check the FAC website frequently for updated sponsored bills and positions. You can also email me directly anytime with any questions. I'm happy to answer them. Last year was a crazy year. This year is quite unusual as well. So again, all of this is sort of evolving as we go through the legislative session. On the budget advocacy side of the House, we have several primary asks. The first one is to eliminate the cost of living contingency. In this year's budget, Governor Gavin Newsom proposed a COLA for the community colleges, but he made it contingent on DEI action plans and increased online classes. Really great ideas by themselves, but we're concerned that having the COLA connected to that. So you can look at some of our advocacy materials and learn more about that issue. We also want to see the cost of living match what the K-12 is getting, which is 3.84%. Yet again, we are fighting to defund Cal Bright. That is a huge priority and one that we've been able to make some progress on in the last couple of years. And then we'd like to see an additional year of hold harmless on the student-centered funding formula. Again, please look to your materials for greater detail. So anything you'd like to add, Wendy?
Yeah, I was just going to say, specifically the materials are the Advocacy Toolkit that we showed in the beginning, that double-sided PDF. So there's information about most of this on that PDF to help you. And then if there's something that you feel you need, please reach out to us and we'll make sure that we can provide it for you. There are other bills that we will be likely sponsoring, or I'm sorry, co-sponsoring, but they hadn't got to our board yet for approval. So please do check back with our FAC website for our expanded list of co-sponsored bills and other positions that we support. I think we can go ahead. So when you finish your meeting, make sure you send a thank you email. Traditionally, we used to meet at a brochure cafe and we used to all write hand notes, and now we have our staffers and our legislators, you know, zooming in from all over California. So to get physical mail is difficult. So a thank you email is fine. And this is where you can attach things like our COFO letter, budget letter, or our some of our talking points that you can use in the email to remind the legislators of our priorities. So make sure that you include those in the document. So other ways that you can be an advocate: follow legislators on social media. I feel that most legislators have a bit of narcissism in them, and they love to be followed on social media. They love to be, you know, retweeted and thanked and everything else. So make sure that you follow them on Twitter or on Facebook or whatever you use. And that's also a great way to find out what they're up to. And you can tag them in things that you want them to pay attention to. You know, you can tag your legislator on Twitter if there's something that comes out about AB 1326, the county liaison bill, and say, hey, I hope you're supporting this. This is great for our community college students. Also sign up for their newsletters. If you go to their web pages, they all have email newsletters. So that's a great way to find out what's going on. They all have town halls or some way to connect to their constituents. Now most of those are virtual. You can go to those, watch their committee hearings, and also check their website for updates. So these are all ways that you can, you know, find out what's happening with your legislators. So next week we have the week of action. You want to talk about it, Stephanie?
Absolutely. So I'd really, really like to encourage everybody who is attending to please come to the town halls with the legislators. We have 3 really prominent legislators coming up. On Tuesday, March 16th at 11 a.m., Assemblymember Berman will be hosting a town hall. He actually authored the fact bill last year that got passed, and he's authoring some really important bills this year that you're going to want to hear about, including ones that the Student Senate is sponsoring, as well as some possibly more controversial bills that the faculty may be interested in. On Wednesday, March 17th at noon, Senator Nancy Skinner we will have her in the town hall. She'll be talking about some budget items. And then on that same day at 2 p.m., we will have Assembly Member Medina. We're also doing something new and fun this year where we're having regional virtual meetings. Monday, March 15th from 5 to 6, Regions B and C. On Tuesday, March 16th from 5 to 6, we've got Region C and E meeting. And then finally on Thursday on March 18th from 5 to 6 p.m., Regions A and F are meeting.
We'd also like to welcome, if faculty, if you have students who'd like to come to the town halls, bring them. You know, we're trying to be as inclusive as possible to make sure that students start to become involved in the conversation and help us with our advocacy. So or there's other faculty in your regions that couldn't attend our conference, please join us. You can jot down our information if you need it, or you can Google me and find me pretty easily. But if you have questions that we didn't cover or we don't have time to cover, then please, by all means, you know, reach out to Stephanie or myself, and we will try and find you the answer to your question. So do we have time for questions, Evan?
We are 5 minutes over time, but Ornette, if you can make it quick, if you can make it a really quick question.
Yeah, I have a really quick question. So do you have a time frame that you would recommend that we try to schedule an appointment with our legislators?
I'm going to bump that to Evan or Stephanie because they're more aware of the legislative calendar.
Go ahead, Stephanie.
Yes. So as far as our bill is going to be heard beginning of April. And then, of course, right now they're negotiating budget issues. So between now and the beginning of April would be fantastic. I will give you a heads up. The end of March is actually the legislative spring break, so they won't be in their offices. So this is something that we'd like to see happen sooner than later. It is hard to get meetings because of Zoom and because so many people are trying to meet with them now that they can do it online. So even if you can't get a meeting until the beginning or mid of April, that's still fantastic. Anytime you can get in front of your legislator and really promote the community colleges and talk about your experiences is just amazing.
Thank you.
And if you send them an email and you don't get an appointment right away, follow up. Again, Valladares's office, which was a new legislator, I think I emailed 4 times. I just would not give up. And then I got an appointment and then I got stiff. She didn't show up. And then I emailed again and I got another appointment. I finally got to talk to her and now she's emailing me a lot. So I think that it's, if you try and you don't hear back, don't give up.
Thank you. Can we get a round of applause for Wendy and Stephanie for their great presentation? Thank you so much. Very informative, critical work that needs to be done to move these policies forward and in other cases, prevent bad policies from occurring. In terms of timing here, yeah, I mean, I hope you all can take this information and schedule your meetings. I hope you all can join the week of action next week. If you have any other questions and you're wondering about how to schedule the meetings, you want some more questions on it or have some more follow-up, that's the time to do it. So we hope you can join us there. And this work continues. For the next month is critical. June, the budget's signed, so work before then is critical. And then it starts over a year in and year out. You have to sort of stick with it. And that's what our organization does. And on behalf of the organization, I want to thank you all for joining and taking time these last 2 days, particularly here on a Saturday, to be with us. I'm really grateful for everyone who participated and everyone who took their time to be part of this with us. So thank you so much. A couple final items in closing here. Nikki Gonzalez-UN had shared a few times a sign-up sheet to get more involved in this sort of work. For those of you, I would encourage you to sign that if you haven't already. You'll also be receiving a survey here shortly in your email at some point here today. We'd love to hear about how you felt the conference went. Of course, this is our first annual virtual conference. We really want to get your perspective, your feedback, your criticisms, and help us, continue to get better with our professional development offerings and our events. With that, in closing, I will just say, since we're over time, I'll make this short. Please have a great weekend. I hope to see you all next week at the Week of Action. Thank you so much for your advocacy, and we hope you stay continued and engaged in fact. Thank you.